Yeah. So it's more.
It's live?
It's more.
counting this countdown.
هي السلايد now? Oh, she's شغالة؟
Yes. لا لا.
لا؟
That's what I want, right?
I opened the link. بس انت عم تبدأي من الأول. ف...
It's not yet, yeah. No.
I believe it's live now.
Just make sure.
live.
Yeah.
They can hear us?
Sure.
Don't go through.
Yeah. Can you refresh?
روحي على تحت اللينك محطوطة لا بس روحي آخر لا هلا بعدنا واحد قديم.
There is a new link now. Can you just check that on WhatsApp?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's working.
Just mute it. You will listen to that again.
Okay, guys, we're live.
Yeah.
You can
You
see the slides on your device.
I was sure that someone wants to.
Go ahead, Darren. Yeah. So sorry for the technical issues.
Where do you think?
So yeah, we were covering the identity part.
You can turn off the volume, guys.
The volume is there.
Yeah. So the second layer of security boundary that you need to consider plus the identity is also the network access, correct? So you see in the presentation, in the slide, we have many services like Azure API, Azure OpenAI services, app services, and they need a kind of a communication, right? So you need app services to communicate to your API management or build agents, virtual machine. And also you need the managed compute you have in the Azure AI Studio subscription to, in the OpenAI subscription to access services inside and outside the same VNet. So that's why you see here it's represented by a private endpoints. So any service most of the service on Azure, it can be accessed through the public access, and also it has the option to be accessed through a private endpoint and the service link. So this is one of the things that you need to ensure when you deploy your OpenAI services, that you have followed this. But it's very difficult actually to maintain this across all. For example, you can see my screen. I have this OpenAI service deployed. Okay, so you can see by default that the network allow network access from anywhere. So the firewall that it comes with this OpenAI service, by default, it allows access from all network and also publicly. Okay, and this is a security risk. How you can prevent it like this behavior from anyone who deploy Azure AI services? You can use a kind of Azure policies, right? So we have a huge list of policies designed to secure AI services. This is one of them, for example. Azure AI service resource should restrict the network access. Simply by applying this policy on a scope like your subscription scope level or resource, will ensure that any resource will be deployed inside it has a public network access restricted. Okay, so you are here not counting on whoever is deploying this to do this, to follow the best practice, but you are enforcing this. So you have two levels actually of applying the policies. You can, at this level, for example, you see that the default value is audit for this policy. Means you may currently have things that's already deployed. It's in place, it's running. So you don't want it to interrupt it before understanding the risk area that you have in your environment. So in order to do that, you can apply the policy that will restrict network access to your Azure AI services, but at the same time, it's only in audit mode. Why audit mode is important? Because it will give you a compliance report. So you can easily have a compliance report that it will show all the services that is not complied with these policies. And then you can take a corrective action accordingly. For example, if you restrict right now, if I said deny, it means that this service will not have public access immediately, but it could also doesn't have a private endpoint created or a private access allowed at the same time. Means this service will not be accessible at all. So the first things you have to do is to audit first if you already have a deployment in place, and then you can enforce the policy later on once you are sure that all of your resources are complied and followed the best practice. Okay. This, for example, Azure AI service resource should encrypt data at rest with customer managed key. When you use OpenAI, you share some data with the OpenAI, right? And Microsoft, because you share some data that could be sensitive data, it will do always encryption at rest. It's something will comes by default.
The Teams link?
Oh,
It's fine.
sorry. Which data is encrypted at rest in terms of user?
All data will be sent. All data will be sent to the OpenAI. It will be encrypted at rest. Nothing. Even you don't need to take any action. You cannot even disable it. But the point is, it's encrypted with using the Microsoft key. So you can also, for example, you go here.
Maybe there will be a lag when you press the screen, the way you are seeing it and the way the other guys are seeing it, there will be a bit of lag.
Sorry.
Online team will be fine if you were not here, but yeah.
Can you show me the features?
Let's say you're here.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know why.
Yeah, I think you can continue, I think.
Yeah. So the encryption now on the screen, the encryption that you see, it's Microsoft managed keys. This is for my OpenAI model. Okay. However, I can click on customer managed key. Then you can generate your own keys from, for example, HSM. Okay, device that you have on-prem, or you can use also Microsoft HSM device to generate the keys that you use for encryption, and then store those keys inside the key vault. So all OpenAI only can connect and get the keys from Azure Vault, key vault that you have deployed. But the keys itself, it will be managed by you. You are responsible for issuing the key and also responsible for rotating the keys. Okay. For example, you have rotation policy every 1 month or 2 months. It is your responsibility to rotate the keys. And Microsoft at this, when encryption is happening, Microsoft will not have even access to this data. Okay. And you cannot recover by using Microsoft keys.
Let's say if you use our own key, and are we going to receive a notification that your key is going to be expired and please update?
No. You have to actually manage your keys. You can actually use something like in Azure Key Vault. You can have like alerts that the keys is about to expire.
Do we have alerts?
Yes, you can have alerts on the Key Vault that it can alert that some keys or certificate is going to be expired. Okay, so you can put a kind of alert on the lifetime. Then whenever it's triggered. And also from HSM device level, where you issue the keys, you should also do this management from the HSM that should be responsible to issue the key and also upload it to the Key Vault. Okay.
By itself.
Yes, because you can. How you generate the key that it will be used for the encryption, not the Key Vault. Key Vault is only a repository to store the keys, but you should generate the key from a secure device. Either it's a HSM device on-prem or HSM device on Azure side. So we have even different tiers, different SKUs for HSM, the managed and the dedicated HSM and so.
But just a technical question. The screen is very small on the display. Is there any because it's coming like this?
Yeah, it just suddenly became smaller.
So I'm not sure if we need to do something on the setting and things like that. It's coming as this. Yeah. The other thing is also like the key vault. Consider that no, you are not even using the keys. You are using the password. Okay. And usually if the password is in the code, you will not even know if you want to change the password, how many places you have to change. Yeah. Okay. But if you are all the code and everything is just like referring to the key vault, you updated once, it will automatically propagate. That's one of the main thing which I feel that it's very easy. Otherwise, even if you create like a password files and everything, you don't know how many places it's in there, and people are afraid to change the password. They say, "Oh, if I change it, I don't know where it will affect."
Yeah, but again, this for the encryption actually the key that I'm referring to here. But for something like I need to cancel this. Okay. For something for accessing OpenAI, the endpoint that you already created, like you need the endpoint and you need the keys, right? This is the optimum way to connect it to your model. Microsoft best practice, no. Okay, you should use Entra ID for authenticating to your model and accessing. you remember, Azure provide an Enter ID to provide a lot of security and security controls. For example, condition access policies, where you can control each identity attempts if it's legitimate or not based on some criteria you define in the conditional access policies. Like, for example, the location, or for example, the device that's accessing is it legitimate device, it has a proper security control, it's managed device or not. All of this you can enforce using the Enter ID conditional access policy, but you cannot do the same using the keys. And managing the keys and do the rotation is not the optimum way to authenticate and access. Even from your code, when you do a code, for example, say like you use C# or whatever code, and you wanted to connect it to your model. Instead of using the credentials to access or access the key vault to provide, you can easily use, for example, the Visual Studio authentication you can access. And also for your app service to access, like for example, you've done the development, you connect your code using your identity that has access to this endpoint, and you've done the code and you wanted to upload it to the app service, for example. You cannot use the same identity because it belongs to you, you're not provided. So you should provide what we discussed last in the other meeting room, the managed identity, where you can provide managed identity to your OpenAI, to your service, and then from identity access management on the OpenAI, you can easily do the rule assignments to provide the accurate and the limited permission for the app service to access the model, okay, or OpenAI endpoint. It's clear? So instead of using keys and rotate the keys and revoke the keys, all of this, you should better. This is Microsoft even recommendation is to use Enter ID for everything for authentication.
Yeah, and one other thing, as Zavi was mentioning, there is security at different level, right? Consider that Zavi is working in a corporate and I'm his friend, and he give me the keys. The other thing is that even if the keys is authenticating, the security, the network, which Zavi was mentioning, that you have to make sure that it's not accessible outside your corporate network. That's why when the network is there, so even if you give me the keys, I will not be able to access it.
Yes.
That's the other level of, you have to take the keys to make sure that people are not doing that from inside, but also like if the keys are passed, even if the authentication is valid, but you have to restrict it on the network and the firewall to make sure that it's still not accessible. Otherwise, people can misuse it, and they can also like blow your cost and things like that. That can all happen.
Yeah. So to ensure that all of your AI services, for example, doesn't have a local access or local authentication enabled, you can do it by two ways, either by policy, as you use with Azure policy, or you can run a PowerShell on a specific AI service to disable local authentication, and then only way to authenticate is using Enter ID, for example. Okay.
Is it okay if I take a picture? If somebody has any things like that, I mean,
With the pizza and all.
I think the professional said.
Microsoft.
Thank you. Do I sign this?
Huh?
Sign it. No, thanks. Pass it to Joseph. Explain that.
Okay. So we saw now different layer of security that you can add from identity. For example, you use Enter ID, use conditional access. From the networking, you use private endpoint. You disable public access on your model. You do segmentation. So only traffic that is only allowed between the services and each other. It's only allowed through routing and firewalls and network security groups that you define on every level. This is what you call network segmentation. So no traffic will be allowed by passing those network segmentation that you already defined in your network VNets. Also, some services like app services, it has managed VNet. You know that private endpoints, actually it's designed for inbound traffic, right? So if you have like an account and you wanted to access this storage account from your only virtual network, you have to provide a private endpoint created. It's like a network interface card with a private IP address attached to a service. This service, it's integrated in the Microsoft Azure resource model, and then it's only accessible only from this private endpoint. So routing, firewall restrictions only will be applied for this specific network card. But what for the opposite direction? What if you wanted to connect from services like app service outside the app service, not for incoming traffic, but for outgoing traffic. So we have option, or we have something, sub-services can has a managed VNet or managed network, where it can also access through this, through the private endpoint. So if you have app service and need to access Azure AI, for example, or OpenAI, you can use this managed identity, sorry, managed network, and then the traffic will come from your local network, not from the public endpoints. So it doesn't need to have access to the public endpoint of the OpenAI. It can easily access from internal. And this is for this kind. If you see in the diagram that I shared before in the architecture, you see something like the app service. It has communication incoming. Okay, sorry. Thank you. Yeah, but this one was way behind. Okay, so you see something like app service. It has one arrow that goes outbound, right, and private endpoint that goes inbound. Means if you want to connect to the app service in internal traffic, you will go through the private endpoints created for this app service. But if the app service needs to communicate externally, it needs to go through the service integration subnet or network, where it can use this to access other private endpoints within your deployment, right? So in this way, you control access to all resources and make sure no external access and no overshared permission given to any one in your environment. This you can guarantee by many things, like applying, as I mentioned, applying policies, and also yeah, okay. And also you may need to run some PowerShell command just to disable local authentication, for example. We have also for the apps for OpenAI, for example, if you wanted to restrict access to specific URLs, like your model will connect it to externally to some websites, but you want to only to restrict the specific websites allowed. This option is not available in the portal, but you can do it from the PowerShell. You can create a kind of additional firewall. It's not firewall, let's say proxy restrictions. So you can use the PowerShell commands to say, I only allow this model or this service, cognitive service account, only to access Microsoft.com. So no other website will be allowed to access beyond what you already mentioned in the list. Okay. There is also one thing that I see most of the customer is not actually aware about, and they are not enabled it, but it's important. It's called the lockbox. Do you know what is lockbox? 99% from the cases when Microsoft support engineer need access to fix something, he doesn't need access to your data. It's not required. But for some specific scenarios, he may need access to your data. But he cannot access this data without your permission if you enable lockbox. So you will be looped always in the permission, in the approval cycle. If you open a support ticket, this support ticket because you have a problem, and this problem the support engineer found that he needs access to your data, or it is something internally, error or issues that is being raised internally that we figure out that the support engineer may need access to your data. In this case, in both scenarios, if you enable lockbox, you can define a list of approval, let's say managers or approval people in your organization, that they should approve this access before the engineer get the access to your data to troubleshoot or fix the problem.
What's the data that you're looking at in terms of the Azure OpenAI service that you need the lockbox access for?
Any data that, for example, you for OpenAI, you send the data, right, to prompts, anything you send. This will be stored temporary. Yeah, this will be stored temporary in the OpenAI, correct? If you have like technical issues that they figure out from our endpoint side, and he needs to troubleshoot it. So he may need to access for the temporary storage that is already there to see why this issue has been raised. Could be a bug in the code, whatever. It always could happen. Okay, so in this case, he may need for troubleshooting purpose, he need to access to this data to see why this issue is raised.
In this case, the support engineer?
Yes, the support engineer. Okay, our Microsoft support engineer. But for transparency, lockbox is important because you will be notified. Okay, so you can easily enable it. It's not difficult. You can easily search for lockbox in the portal. Okay.
You have to wait a few seconds.
Yeah. It's called the
live stream.
it's called the customer lockbox for Microsoft Azure. We have the similar option for M365 and also in Azure. So just to enable, just you need to come here. It's disabled, and that's it. Okay, and then you receive here appending requests whenever you open a ticket.
What can he do with the data?
It will not do anything harmful. It is only for
It's
troubleshooting
not like
purpose.
he can copy it, it's just stays where.
Yeah, it will say with
for
whatever.
the-
Actually, even this will be monitored, and the access that he got will be logged and monitored. He cannot take it externally. He cannot extract it anywhere. But for transparency, because he may see something or access your data, this you must be aware about it. You can decline that, by the way. You can say, no, I don't want to, I don't approve that. And then he will not be able to access the data. Then we can take another measure, or you can escalate the case with Microsoft and see how we can fix the problem. If you see that it's not sensitive, it's fine. You are aware and you raise this for troubleshooting purpose, you can approve this for Microsoft. This is, so we loop you in our internal approval cycle. Even the engineer cannot get the access to himself. This will be escalated. Sometimes it's very rare actually that he need that, only for very sophisticated cases that may need access to that. Okay, so this is important. Who will be notified when you enable it? Because you see it doesn't have much options. It's we have an intra ID. We have a group for lockbox. You will find it in intra ID role. Whoever you assign inside, he will get notified. Okay. So now you have your policy applied, you have the security baseline applied, you follow the best practice in deployments, identity in place, restrictions in place, your data is secure, you have nothing to worry about. Is it enough? You have the governance, everything in place. You remember when we was discussing four steps securing AI services. What is missing now? We did a lot of things to ensure your solution is secure, but still something very important is missing.
Governance.
Governance is
Did you mention anything about zero trust?
yeah, zero trust.
Okay,
We already
Vulnerabilities? Vulnerabilities?
yeah, very close, like monitoring, right? So you have to keep monitoring what's going on, right? You did everything, but maybe some resources not compliant, maybe some misconfiguration in place and you are not aware about. Could be vulnerability that recently raised, right? They keep happening. You have some virtual machines or some storage accounts or something that is not following the security best practice. Even with governance in place, still could something raise. We see people do exception exclusions a lot of time, and eventually they figure out that they have still issues.
Is there monitoring services within Azure or the OpenAI service itself?
Yeah, this one, I'm coming to this. So that's why I strongly recommend you to give a chance to Microsoft Defender for Cloud, where we have a lot of things that is designed specifically for AI governance, AI monitoring and security detection. Okay, so if you go to Microsoft Defender for Cloud, I have some screenshots, so let's stick to that because we don't have much time. Okay, so for example, if I go to Microsoft Defender for Cloud and I want to see which data are used for AI grounding, for example. Okay, so this is a kind of query. I have a lot of resources deployed, but I want to see which data has been used for grounding my AI services. Okay, so this is like a simple query. Then it can list down, okay, you have like 3 services used for grounding. It's Azure AI services, like search service. It's used for grounding my AI model. And you see like beside each one coming to this Azure AI service resource, for example. For example, this one, the first one has the risk Azure AI service resource should restrict the network access. So it has public access enabled on this one. And this one is very sensitive because it's used for grounding your model, right? If anyone has access to this, he can do data poisoning, for example, correct? So easily you detected your services that is not meeting the best practice and recommendation, and with the severity level that you can take action, or you can raise it or forward it to someone else to take action. And you can monitor until you fix it. It will come with action card. Wait for a second until it's come. So it says, for example, this one, Azure AI service resource should restrict the network access. And it provides comprehensive details about how you can fix this problem and what is the risk that attach it to this one. Okay. This one, for example, Azure AI service resource that should have key access disabled. I mean, disable local authentication, right? So it's just telling you that you have one of the services that's used for grounding your AI, because I only filtered with grounding resources used for AI grounding.
It's sorry to cut you off, but it's still stuck on this page for like a long time.
No.
You see it?
We
You
need
see
to. Yeah.
Your phone.
Okay.
No, this.
My fault. Follow.
Yeah.
Continue.
So,
Sorry.
okay, so you can take a remediation like immediately to do the fix, and then it will do the fix to you, or you will follow the steps to do the remediation by enforcing the policy or whatever. Okay, so this is a lot of recommendation that came just by filtering Azure AI. Okay. Here, this one I love the most, the attack path analysis. And this actually is not only look to the resource individually, it also will look to the resource just in like from the communication perspective, right? Assume that you have like this example. This example, for example, I have Azure OpenAI. Let's wait for a moment.
It's actually 10-15 seconds.
Let's look at on the positive side. So I'm going to be the most actually here.
Okay.
Yes, there.
Yeah, so you see here, it's very hard to detect this risk using the bare eyes. What is the risk here? You have a virtual machine that access Azure OpenAI. And in order to do that, it uses a managed identity. It looks very cute, no issues here, except that this machine has a very severe vulnerability. Okay, it's missing some very severe vulnerability, CVE, whatever. Okay, but the risk here is even if you have managed identity that access this Azure OpenAI service through private endpoints, the risk here that this machine can be compromised because of the security risk that come to it, right? So what is the corrective action here is to update or fix or cover the severity or the CVE that is raised by the tool. It's very hard to how you will detect something like that, even if you have patch management. Sometimes some small configuration could lead to a severity, not even patched using the normal patching mechanism. You need to do some manual thing like remove registry keys or uninstall some. Actually, will be in attack path analysis. So it will provide you see here like a huge list. You have many critical things that you can just easily identify by looking to this portal. Okay, each one of them it's very sophisticated because you don't have this visibility across. You don't know this machine access to what exactly, and this we use the Azure networking and Azure Defender and also Azure monitoring. Okay. So from the portal, if you go to the Microsoft Defender for Cloud, okay, you can easily go to the, for example, Cloud Security Explorer. Right now, it has some queries, useful queries, but it will come. You will find more queries will be coming. For example, you can just get AI workloads and models in use just with one simple query. Okay, And this can be from Azure or also from AWS or GCP. You can even define the location where you wanted to get to run this query. Okay. So if I do like okay, and like in my case, I don't have much. This is my lab. So it just with very simple query, it can just retrieve a list of all Azure OpenAI services that I have and the location with everything. It's not actually getting the security risk attached, just a query as like a resource graph query, but it's only with built-in query that you can use. When it comes to the recommendations, you can also filter. Okay, like for example, you can filter. When we have more, you can see like I have here. Sorry. One permission of inactive identity in your Azure subscription, blah, blah, blah. You have many risks that comes. You can also filter if you want to only to see regarding AI, you can also add a filter with a resource type and just select the AI resources that you want to filter. So not all risk will come, only the risk that attach it to AI services will be raised to the surface. Okay. And this is the attack path analysis that I just showed you the demo. Okay. Any questions so far?
And then everything fails, then we unplug the cable, right?
Hmm?
That is the unplug the cable, the internet cable.
Yeah.
If that's nothing works, unplug. That's the last
resort. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we covered different area of security. Is it everything? No, still you go to the data level security, right? So this is, for example, to ensure that your data is, for example, your data can be stored inside different databases. So inside vector database, inside the storage account, whatever the data that you use for your service. This is also, you need to consider the data. It's not covered in the presentation, but this is also one thing that you need to think about and consider when you deploy your AI or use AI services. Okay. I hope I covered everything. Do you have any questions?
And some of these things, concepts are not just for cloud, right? This is all like even on your on-prem, what easy. Like that, it's easy to track the information.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, all these concepts, I think, all apply to on-prem services as well.
Yeah. So always when you design, you have to ensure that you follow the recommended architecture, which is designed to reduce the surface of attack and reduce the risk, and also to always monitor and apply the best practice and recommendation when it's available. We have a lot of Azure policies that is designed to restrict your your AI services, not only OpenAI, any AI services. Make sure that you apply them, and when you say it's relevant to your workload and relevant to your environment. We already listed it in our documentation, so you don't need to go different location, just one document that lists down all the required or recommended Azure policies to secure. I just showed you a glimpse of the policies that we have, but this is like a plenty of them. You can go to the portal and then apply all of them. Just when you click, it will redirect you to the proper policy definition in Azure portal. You can collect them in one initiative and then apply it. You can have a different level of policy and restrictions applied, depends on the environment. If it's production or it's dev test environment, because in dev test, you may need to relax the policy a little bit for testing and blah, blah, but for production and for staging, you may need to apply the maximum security measures in place. Okay. So this will be based on your judgment. If you see this is relevant to your environment, but this at least listed in the Microsoft security baseline. We call this security baseline for AI. So you can just follow that. Identity, it's very, very important, because when we see a lot of risk and a lot of attacks happening, it's because the identity. So follow all of the best practice when it comes to the identity, follow the least privilege, follow the point in time, the just in time, privilege identity management, packaging, privilege packages, all of this, and also the least privilege assigned on the resources, and then you reduce the surface of attack. And then when it comes to communication, you see that if you follow this architecture, for example, you reduce the risk at the maximum, right? For Azure Container Registry, also Cloud for Defender, for example, it has a different areas of inspections. For example, it also can detect the vulnerability inside the images and you have in the container in ACR. If the image that you have, it has a risk and it's mounted, it's inside the ACR, it can also detect this has some vulnerability. So you cannot use it in production or in any model. Okay. Storage accounts, AI service, every app services, it's all Defender will ensure that you don't have any, at least it will raise alerts whenever you have a security vulnerability or a security risk. Okay.
So just to summarize from my side again, all the service, okay, if it's a corporate until there is a need, disable all public access. Okay, everything needs to be private. The second thing is that there was one recommendation to disable like the password or the key-based authentication. Okay, everything should be within priority, which is coming from the Azure Active Directory, the previous thing. The other thing is once you do that, enable the manage identity access. Okay, that is the other one. Then you enable monitoring on each and everything. Okay, then you check the defenders. Okay, if there is threat protection needed, that enable that. Then on the data side, check, for example, that the only data which is needed, only that is the ones that. Okay? And then whoever has access, just the least privilege access. In summary, these are like the high level that we need to follow. Okay, and then the monitoring part, how to monitor if you miss something, or even if it's this one, that you have a malicious admin user and I'm doing something, you need to have a logs, you need to have monitor if the service is, let's say, use too much or too.
Things shared for. Since you can.
This managed identity, right? Like the system assigned that we can do all this
Yeah.
So this managed identity is a particular service. So it has access to the resource. And
Yeah. Let me show you. Let me show you a demo. It's like
you should go. I think that multiple servers.
Let's go to a virtual machine, right? I have like many virtual machine. Okay, now we demo C01. Okay, and yeah, yeah, really? Because maybe we are, you make till 7:30. We are 7:35.
Maybe like last time, maybe we can all come here.
Yeah, the last thing.
But so yeah, people we can stand here if you want. You can see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That is gone, I think. So better.
Or we cannot share the Teams.
That's okay.
Okay, so this is the virtual machine I have. This virtual machine may need to add storage account, hoping able to see the anything, right? If you sign in inside this VM using RDB or Bastion, when you access anything, like you open PowerShell and try, or you File Explorer and try to access a file shared inside one storage account, like the keys for the storage account to access, for example. But I can make the VM itself authenticate using its own identity, regardless who actually signed into this machine. So if a service running inside this virtual machine and require access, it doesn't need the user to use his credential to access. The VM itself, it will use its own identity to access the service. Why this is important? Because at any certain point of time, you can revoke the access you give to this VM, right? Regardless who signed in. If the user is admin signed in this VM, he cannot access the storage account because you give only access to the identity that attached to this virtual machine. So this VM itself will behave as a personas. So you can assign two options, system assigned or user assigned. The system assigned, if I said okay, on, and save, it will generate a system assigned identity only for this VM and attach it only to this VM. You cannot use this system assigned system identity with any other resources. It's only once you delete this VM, this system identity will be deleted as well. It's not used anymore.
And it's managed by Microsoft.
It's totally managed. You don't need to reset a credentials or do anything. It's totally secure and managed by Microsoft. When it comes to the user assigned, this is in case if you already created a user or you want to create a user that will be used by different services at the same time. So the lifetime of this user identity is when you decide to terminate it or delete it. It's not tied to a specific resources. Okay, so you can create this one and assign to 4 VMs at the same time. They can use the same user identity. And VM1, once it's been deleted, still the user identity does exist. And I can assign it to a new machine I provisioned in the skill set, for example. So usually we use it to access more than one resource need to access to the same services, but using one single identity. In this case, we option.
To avoid having a lot of system identities.
Yes, you for if you have system, you will find a penalty because every system you create or every service, it will has its own. But if you wanted to manage it in a way like one identity used by many services to access one resource or whatever, you can use user assigned at the system time. The life cycle for each is different. One is tied to the service, to the resource that is created for. And whenever the resource is deleted, the system identity will be deleted. And one, it will can retain, and even all resources deleted, still you can assign to a new virtual machine you create after 1 week or whatever. So you already done some investments in giving permission to this user assigned. So you don't want it to delete it because you know, and after 1 week or in the next project, we'll use the same identity to provide access to a new project or new VMs. So you can keep it, and when you provision the new VMs, you can simply attach it to the same user assigned, and they will get access to many storage accounts that you already gave permission using RBAC to. Clear?
One the user assigned identity is similar like we are creating apps right in Azure.
No, it's not. It's
client
not like
ID,
service
client
principle.
secret.
No. You mean to talk about service principle?
Yeah.
No, it's different than service principle. Yeah, service principle is used for also providing permission, but the life cycle for the service principle is different and used for different purposes. But no, it's not.
That has a key, right? And this one is
Yes,
without.
certificate. You can, if you want to enforce authentication by certificate or by key, or you can use the service principle. No,
For the service principal, but for here only key is kind of
automatically it will be created and also managed by Microsoft.
yeah.
You don't need to.
It's managed identity as well. It's called user, but it's managed identity. Means Microsoft to manage it.
Actually, I was doing one work was kind of thing where programmatically I need to increase the virtual machines instance count
Okay.
through system.
Yes, user identity.
There is a code like a default Azure credential with the credential option. We will have to pass that. There is the input is only the ID.
Yes.
If you give the ID, automatically it will work. We don't. I mean, when we are running it in locally in our studio.
Yeah.
When we deploy to the Azure as a consider as a web job. When in a web services, I mean in the app services, if you deploy it as a Azure web job, so it will automatically work.
It will use this identity to authenticate.
We should provide only the ID of this user as an identity.
Yeah, you can just
an ID and then.
yeah. Once you create it,
Okay.
you can find it again. For example, if I create one here. Add user assign manage identity.
You have to create that in first.
I don't have anyone.
You have to create first.
I played with this lab a lot, but I don't have any.
Managed identity.
You can use
Directly we can search as a managed identity.
Right.
From there we can create.
from here.
No, from the top
yeah.
search managed identity.
Yes.
Yes, from here create.
Let's say this resource group.
Yeah, kind of user. So we can.
Let's do one.
There was a question now that if we are sending the data to the API and there is some sensitive data, how we can restrict that. So there can be two things, like it's the kind of the data you need to validate first, whether this data should go to the endpoint or not. First, on the compliance side, it says that you can, when you send some data to the OpenAI, you can disable the logging. Because the logging is for the harm detection and like different type of controls that you can put. So it's not logged. By default, it's logged. So your prompts will be logged for some time. Okay, but you can disable that. The other thing is that even if you don't want to send it temporarily to the API, that you don't know where it's safe. Okay, what you need to do, you need to run another AI model to make sure that there is no PII data in the text. Yes. So you just like run the other cognitive service, which detect the personal PII data. You run that and you like anonymize it and then send that data in there. So that's the other way of doing it.
Yeah. So now you see that once I created the managed identity, when I come back to the virtual machine, I just need to select this identity. That's it. And you see that this one I can use also for other resources, not only this VM. Okay. In opposite, the system managed, system assigned identity, which I cannot use anywhere else. Okay. So then you use this identity, for example, on any service, any resource to get to give access management, like role assignments, and you can use this managed identity to give a granular permission on your node. So only permission assigned to this identity by the VM that's trying to access the whatever resource. Like in your case, you do it in an automation way, so you don't need to worry about assigning because you already done the permission once. So just you need to attach this to the VM in the skill set. Good.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sorry for the technical issues.